All right, this is Adulting 101. We're doing voting, get informed without the overwhelm tonight. And basically what we're going to go through is how to do frameworks. Basically, we're going to go over like general election stuff, what the elections are, and where to find information, and how I think about like voting essentially, and how I make decisions, because I don't cheat necessarily, but I personally can't always stay on top of everything, but I like knowing that I have good information, up-to-date information. I personally get a mail-in ballot, and then usually the day of, if it's a primary election day or general election, I'll sit down and run through the process that we'll go through at the end. And that's how I put everything together. So that, oh, it's so cool. Okay, sorry, playing with something new. Oh, look, I did about me. Good job. I'm Gail. You can see my face if you're on video. But we're going to talk about voting. So I included this vocabulary slide because there's a lot of information to go through. And so we won't define all of these terms, but the terms are good to know. And those are things to look up if you aren't sure about things. Things we will cover is ballot, polling place, primary election, presidential election, general election, mail-in ballot a little bit. The things I included on the right side, the referendum questions, ballot measures, propositions and amendments, and advisory questions, those are all things you might see on a ballot. I checked the local Pennsylvania one for if you're in Butler County. Specifically, I checked the Center Township ballot for the current presidential/general election, and I didn't see anything extra, but that could be different based on where you are. So first, we're going to go through the different types of elections. So we have primary elections and general elections, and then presidential/general elections. So the primary elections, oh man, my slides are messed up. That's hysterical. Okay, well, I'll tell you about primary elections and then I'll update the slides later. So primary elections are, they happen generally a few months before the general and presidential elections. In the state of Pennsylvania, they happen in May. And basically, in order to participate in the primary elections, you need to be there for each party. So the Republicans have a primary election, Democrats have a primary election. And that the primary elections also might have some local stuff, and you might see some other things on there. And I'll update the information so it's right. Presidential elections, the primaries happen every year. Presidential elections happen every 4 years, and basically you elect the president and the vice president, and any registered voter can vote for any candidate regardless of their party affiliation. So you don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat to vote in the presidential elections, and those happen in November. It's a long explanation, but it's like the second Tuesday after the first Monday or something like that. Nope, I hit the down arrow. Okay, general elections. So general elections are various, like you elect lots of different people across multiple levels of government. So this includes local, state, things like that. I'm not going to read the electoral process. You can read that. Schoolhouse Rock has fantastic things on how elections work and ballots and things like that. So I was going to try to find YouTube videos of those, but I already put a lot of time into making sure that this was right, so I stopped. So general elections have regular intervals. They're every 2 to 6 years, depending on the office being contested. So, and that is specific to which office. There's always, I think we always have general elections. There's always something coming up. So there's always something to vote for in November. The general election also happens in November. So this year we have a presidential / general election. That's why I keep saying it like that. Next year will just be a general election because we will have already done the president, vice president ticket. Oh, and sorry, it's the first Tuesday after the first Monday. So a lot of firsts, no seconds. Okay, so this has to do with knowing your status as a voter. This is like the first thing I think about. I wanted to run through election types because some people will actually go in and only vote for a president or vice president ticket, and they won't vote on anything else because they don't understand necessarily where to find things. And there's a lot of sometimes the ballots actually, like if there's a referendum or some of those other things that I listed in the vocabulary sheet, they're kind of hard to understand. And if you're like me, and reading and processing and having to make a decision in what feels like a very short amount of time, because I feel like someone's waiting on me, I need to review it ahead of time and understand and make a choice. So questions to answer for your voter registration is first, are you registered to vote? Is your address up to date? Did you move since the last time? Is your party affiliation current? Have you changed how you're thinking about stuff? Has the party you were previously affiliated with changed so dramatically that you're ready to do something else? Those are things to think about. And the other thing that is, you can change your party affiliation multiple times. So just because you chose one path doesn't mean you have to choose something else. I think personally, I want to be able to vote in the primaries. So I register in one of the two parties just so that I can participate in the primary elections. Whether or not that's right, that's just what I do. The other thing to know is where your polling place is. So if you're in smaller areas like we are here in Butler County, when they change township lines, if they redraw things, it can change where your polling place is. So just go check where that is. And the polling place will show on your voter registration card. And if you've lost that, can't find it, you can get that information online. I put in a line here about know your deadlines. Further in the presentation, there's actually a link to all of the Pennsylvania state deadlines. So there's a full timeline. I listed the official government sources. So the Secretary of State website will have information, the National Voter Registration Day resources, and then USA.gov has voting and election sections. Helpful. Okay. This was something that I actually found. How did we go? Are we there already? We are there already. Okay. So Vote Save America is free. I went through the process and took a screenshot of what the inside looked like because to me it was really cool that it had the build your own ballot feature. Find out how to vote, so it'll tell you like your date, time, place to vote. It'll send you to where you can check for your voter registration, and you can request a ballot. So in order to do a mail-in ballot, you do have to request it. I think there's like two different. You can do it on a temporary basis, so if you just need a one-time mail-in ballot, or you can request to just be on the routine mail-in ballots. So like I don't have to remember anymore to request it. Mail-in ballots are important for people who maybe aren't in, like maybe they work outside the county where they vote in. So I'm not always in Butler County on our election days. Although I try to be because I like to walk my mail-in ballot into the polling place, like into the, because actually it's faster for me to walk, easier for me to drop it off at our election center than it is for me to go to my polling place. The election center is actually closer to my house. On the right side of the slide over here, This behind the logo, it'll show you what your next election date is. It'll tell you your deadline. So we talked about deadlines a second ago. And I thought those things were really cool. These are my notes over here. It was a free resource. It's nonpartisan. The Build Your Own Ballot is based on your address. So if you put your address where you're registered to vote, it'll pull and show you all of the different things that you're able to vote on that year or in that election. And I did double check it against the current sample ballot for Center Township, just to make sure it was accurate. And it did, because I was worried that maybe it wouldn't pull everything because whatever. So yeah, so Vote Save America is pretty sweet. That's all free. And I just, to cite my sources, I found it because Under the Desk News talked about it on TikTok. So this is courtesy of TikTok. So these are some other resources I found that are like Vote Save America. So InfoVote has some of the same information. I didn't look at it, but I did list it. And then Ballot Ready also offers some of the same things. I would say Vote Save America didn't seem to include, the reason I included InfoVote is because it listed that it had unbiased news, and Vote Save America just has that like functionality to get voting stuff lined up for you. And then Ballot Ready has information about candidates and issues as well. All right, so finding the info, which I think for a lot of people is part of the hard part. So information, you need to know all the things, but how do you find it? The first thing I look for is you need to know who and what your options are. What are you actually coming to make decisions on? So I try to start with my sample ballot. Butler County makes that really easy. I have a link directly to our sample ballots in the presentation. But that's usually my first stopping point. It's like my shopping list. So the next thing where you actually go do the research is online platforms, websites, apps, which we'll go over. There's local government sites, and then sometimes social media, and not sometimes, probably a lot of the time. So this is what a sample ballot looks like. I just took a screenshot of Center Township 1. This happens to be 60, which is behind the logo. But you can't read all of that. But basically, it's got the presidential election, which is up here at the top. It's got our senator. We're voting on senators this year. We have the attorney general. We have the auditor general, state treasurer, representative in Congress. This happens to be the 16th congressional district. And then the senator in the General Assembly, and then the representative in the General Assembly. So the General Assemblies, those are at the state level, I believe. And it'll also tell you on the sample ballot, like, it looks exactly like the ballot will look like when you go in, but it includes like how many terms, how long the terms are, etc. Any questions so far? No? Okay, cool. So I included what I found to be non-partisan voter guides. These offer unbiased information on candidates' positions and voting records. And those are two things that I use to help me make decisions, which I include in the framework at the end. So we've got vote401.org, ballotpedia.org, and ontheissues.org. These are two apps. One Angie actually put me onto, which was ActiveVote at the top, and Votable. So I've included some information about why some of these might be just information to help you decide if you want to go play in them. I hear ActiveVote is pretty fun. It has some gamification in it and social interaction. And I haven't downloaded any apps about any of this stuff. So I am not a good person to talk about it. But yeah, so the information's there. These are sources that are specific to Butler County. I included direct links to the official county election website. The it's important to go back to your county local information, because sometimes things change at the last minute. Generally it doesn't, but if you're not sure about something or you just want to double check, it's a good place to go back to the see what's what, because they'll have updated information because they're required by law to do it. And I also included a direct link to the 2024 presidential election specific information to Butler County. These are links to the state website. This one I thought was cool. So every polling place has different machines. So I used to vote in the state of Arizona, and Arizona voting is different than Pennsylvania voting. And I'm in the transit. I'm young enough to have voted on paper with the thing around me, and I'm old enough to have voted on machines and punch card, like hanging Chad things. I've seen all of them in very recent memory. So this actually goes through specifically for Butler County what in-person voting options you have, which I thought was cool because it had the accessibility information, and for people who need to have an idea of what they're walking into, so they're not faced with, oh my gosh, I have to learn how to use this new machine and do the voting stuff. Again, going back to that overwhelm. And this link will take you to dates to know for the PA election. So it's got a really long timeline of how things work. I wanted to include fact-checking websites. So when you're researching, you're able to do some fact-checking of your own. I'm not going to read them off, but they're there. Now we're to the making decision part, which is my favorite part. So this is what I do to vote. So the left side over here has my steps, and then the right side has like my filters and my decision tree type deal. So on this side, I start with my sample ballot, so I know what I'm researching. So I kind of use it like my outline if I was starting a research paper. I would open up one of the reference sites we talked about or get into one of the apps and then start plugging in names. And I would look at, I usually would do on the sample ballot, if I could, I would print it out. If I can't print it out, write it on a Post-it note, on a paper towel, whatever. And I've actually written it on my arm before, my end result choices. And then step 4 is using the questions on the right. I make my list of decisions on candidates and any referendums. And then on the bottom, I'll reiterate, on election day, I actually walk my mail-in ballot in. And I usually make my decisions the day of because sometimes candidates drop out. And that happened, I think, when I turned, I don't know, when I was 18. Let's see, I'm 36. So every 4 years, I would have been, the year I turned 20 was a presidential election. And someone I was really excited to vote for dropped out. Like, I know one of the years, someone I had voted for dropped out, and that was unfortunate for me. So I decided after that I wasn't going to do that anymore. So what I'm looking for is, do we line up on the issues, which is a really broad statement, like we don't have enough time to go into everything. What's their previous service political experience? Like, have they held this office before? How did they vote in the past? What kind of if it's a judicial, what kind of decisions did they make? What were their rulings like? Do I agree with those things? Do they, I try to approach this from a big picture perspective. So it's not just what's affecting me, but like what's happening economically in our area, what's happening with different demographics, what's happening with different populations. And could the person I'm voting for potentially make things worse, have a negative impact? And so what I'm looking for is, based on my worldview, what's the who's the best person I can choose that will make the most positive impact in the area I'm living in. You're also going to want to look at what their work experience is. Were they a teacher? Were they, depending on their role, were they in management? So thinking how the different jobs that people have held, regardless of whether or not they have service or political experience, or if they've held this position before, their work experience can actually help you make a decision about whether or not they might be a good fit for the job. Because really what you're doing is you're helping make a decision as an interviewer. You're like the hiring manager. We're getting to hire these people to work for us. And so I think if we approach these things like that, it becomes a little easier to make those decisions. On Ballotpedia, they have the opportunity to answer interview questions. So one of my key factors is, did they bother to answer the questions? Has this person done the work of being able to explain their position? Have they talked about themselves? Are they sharing information about themselves? Because the world we live in now, it's nearly impossible to make these choices without having more information. And so I kind of use that as it's a red flag, green flag. Or they come to, did they fill it out basically? And in some cases, especially on the super local level, that's not a great line of demarcation, because they may not know that Ballotpedia is an option. Not everyone in their area is looking at those things. But definitely at the state level and above, those people really should have filled in Ballotpedia. And then the other part is looking at what's on their social channels. If you can't find the information you're looking for, or you're still not sure, I would then go look at their social channels. I didn't list this on here because I don't necessarily knock people for not having a website, but most candidates for anything will have some sort of website. And if they've held the position before, then you can go be looking at what their information was on the existing website. And then, as I said, anything else that would be a red, green flag based on my worldview, which is really specific to me. So that's my decision stuff. Next, I found these civic engagement tools, which I thought were cool. I didn't include these, but I subscribe to Spotlight PA, which will give you, they've been doing coverage on election stuff. I also have a couple of, I'm looking at usually what cases are being brought to the Supreme Court, what cases are being brought to the Superior Court, and looking at what judgments are happening in the state of Pennsylvania. I also happen to track Arizona because I have a vested interest in Arizona as well. But those are other ways to kind of be informed of what kind of policies are being enacted, shaped, because the judicial stuff has an impact on our what happens locally as well. Secrets.org. Okay, so what now? Mark your calendar for polling day. Request time off or get coverage. I like to set a calendar reminder to request a mail-in ballot if you haven't done that yet for next year, because I didn't look to see if you'd missed the timelines yet or not to get that, and then get out and vote. Questions? No? No questions? Okay. All right. If you're watching the replay, thanks. Bye. Full screen. Tune in next time for Adulting 101.